The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic, Chapter 4, In Which Home is Where the Heartache Is. The storm clouds passed, the dawn broke, the sun rose, and so did the mountain. At the edge of the willow woods, a broom flew through the window of a cottage that landed in a mud puddle. "Oh, Mother, it wasn't my fault," wailed a girl who was normally quite pretty but whose face was now swollen with crying and buried in her apron. "I tried to do as you said, I really did. I dusted and washed and sorted and folded and mended, but Persimmone was daydreaming as usual, and I only asked her to sweep the floor, and then she threw the broom across the room, and it broke the giving pot, and by the time I had finished picking up all the little pieces, she was gone. But I did find the sewing needle you lost 3 months ago." "Prunella, my foolish child, my delight, my darling, my dolt of a daughter, I'd rather you had lost the sewing needle and found your sister." Prunella broke down in another fit of crying. She had tried so hard, she really had. The teacups were so neatly stacked. Mrs. Smudge's eyes were sharp, and her hair was swept back tightly in a bun and tied with a handkerchief that was an odd mixture of faded purple and yellow stripes. It had not taken her long to search the cottage for her missing child, since the room only contained 3 small, lumpy beds, a table with a broken leg, a wooden wash basin filled with newly cleaned dishes, and a huge fireplace with a pot for cooking. The rest of the space was taken up with piles of branches and vines waiting to be woven into baskets. Of course, there was a hole in the corner and the ladder leading to the cellar underground, but Persimmone never went down there. It was too small to imagine in, she always said. There were no books in the cottage because Persimone's mother had a moral objection to education. She also had a moral objection to shoes, barbershops, dancing, oysters, and freckles, among other things. Since Persimmone insisted on playing outdoors and her fair skin was prone to freckles, Mrs. Smudge had finally overcome her moral objection to hats and bought one a week ago. It was the only one she could afford because it was a ridiculous thing and the shopkeeper was anxious to get rid of it. "So she took the hat, did she?" said Mrs. Smudge, seeing the bare hook on the wall. "Does she think I am made of money that I can buy a new hat every time she decides to run off with one? Oh, the poor thing, what has become of her? She could have been eaten by a tortoise or trampled by a restless mangrove or kidnapped by a leaf eater and dragged underground never to be seen again. At the very least, she is soaking wet. Serves her right, the disobedient imp. Throw a broom and break my giving pot? She probably went to fetch a new one from old Theodore, hoping I wouldn't notice. Oh, she is too much like her father, too much. Always brave and never sensible. Well, she can't have gotten far. Come, Prunella, we'll find her before dinner time, I'm sure. An acorn never falls far from the tree, and a hungry stomach never wanders far from the kitchen. That's what I always say. But oh, my poor little lost lamb, my thoughtless, spoiled hooligan." "But, Mother, why are we going to look for acorns?" Prunella said, blowing her nose in her apron. "Are we going to eat them for dinner now that the giving pot won't give us any more bread?" "We are not looking for acorns," Miss Smudge said impatiently. "We are looking for your sister." "But you just said—" "Prunella Smudge!" "Yes, Mother?" Persimone's mother and sister could have searched until many dinners had passed without ever finding Persimmone, who had awakened to a cold, clammy bed, a centipede crawling up her arm, and a cramp in her leg. Not exactly the way to start off the morning on the right foot. The first thing she did was stretch out her cramped leg as far as she could into the hollow tree trunk. Her foot met something soft, and there was a muffled yelp. Persimmone bolted out of the hole into the sunshine. "Who's there?" she exclaimed, backing away from the tree trunk. From the darkness of the hole came a hesitant reply. "Warble?" Persimmone crept closer, straining to see the hidden speaker while still keeping a safe distance from the tree. She picked up a large stick. "Who are you?" she said. Have you been there all night?" A very unpleasant sensation traveled down her spine. "Come out so I can see you." There was a long pause. Then out of the hollow tree trunk came a pink, bald head with a deeply lined brow. Out came shoulders as stooped as if they bore the weight of the entire mountain. Out came a short body, nearly swimming in clothes several sizes too big for it, with sleeves and trouser legs rolled up thickly and covered with mud and beetles. The wide, round, red-rimmed eyes that stared up into Persimmone's were the eyes of someone who may have been happy once or twice in his life, but far too long ago to remember now. Though he was obviously not a child, he only came up to her shoulders, as if someone had taken a grown-up man and squashed him. He reminded her of a potato, small and lumpy and utterly unadventurous. "Put the stick down, oh please put the stick down," the little man cried. "Don't you know you could hurt someone?" Persimmone decided she had nothing to fear from a person obviously terrified of her, so she put the stick down and sat on a rock with a sigh of relief. "I'm Persimmone," she said, "and I have had the worst night in history. You'll never believe what I've been through. My hat flew away and I got drenched in a thunderstorm, and a poison-tongued jumping tortoise chased me through the woods and nearly killed me, and I've had nothing to eat since lunch yesterday, and I'm so hungry I could eat something very, very big, as long as it doesn't taste like my mother's cooking." Wervil gazed at her with bottomless sympathy. "And the worst part of all," she continued miserably, "is that I'm lost and I have no idea how to get back home again." "Oh, I can fix that." Wervil brightened a bit. "I was so afraid I'd get lost in the woods that I made a map. It's in my house." "How far away is your house?" "Right behind those trees over there. It's in a clearing." Wervil pointed, and the two began picking their way through the thick shrubbery toward the spot. "If your house is nearby, why did you spend the night in a tree trunk?" "I was on my way home, but it came after me before I could get there." "The poison-tongued jumping tortoise?" "No, the cricket. And then the rain came, and then you came, and then the leaf-eaters—" He broke off. "The what?" A sudden memory washed over her. Voices in the night, spindly legs, a letter from a king, gold under the mountain, digging. "So you heard them too? It wasn't a dream?" No, I didn't hear a word, not about kings or gold or anything. I was asleep. Here's the clearing up ahead. My house is—" Wervil stopped so suddenly that Persimmone bumped into him. There was certainly a clearing and a lot of churned up earth in the center of it, but no house in sight. Wervil fell on his knees and gripped his bald head in his stubby hands. "Not again," he cried. "I knew it. I am the most miserable person in the whole world." Persimmone was just about to say that if you're silly enough to lose your own house, you're better off keeping your map in your pocket. But Wervil was already dashing into the woods again. "Hey!" yelled Persimmone, following him. "Where are you going? Stop! Wait for me!" But Wervil didn't slow down, and he ran remarkably fast for someone with such short legs and such long trousers. "It all started on my 6th birthday," he wailed as he ran. "The whole family was gathered, and I knocked over the cake with all the candles and burned the house down. I alone survived." "That's terrible," said Persimmone breathlessly, truly feeling sorry for him, but wondering what this had to do with finding his house in the woods. "That's when I lost all my hair. It burned off and never grew back. After that, I moved in with my uncle on the northern coast. My uncle was a fisherman, you see, and taught me how to fish. But one day I was out fishing, and he was in the cottage taking a nap, and a huge wave swept the cottage out to sea with my uncle inside." "I really am sorry, but don't you think we should be marking our trail or something?" "Then I moved south and tried my hand at being a farmer," he continued, panting and wheezing as Persimmone struggled to keep up. "That was the year of the great sweet potato famine, when the crops rebelled and refused to produce anything but turnips, and of course no one wanted to eat turnips. And so my farm failed and I had to move to Candlenut to be apprenticed to a beekeeper whose hives were just downwind of the pepper mill. But I am allergic to pepper, you see, and one time I sneezed so hard I cracked a rib, which was bad enough, but the sneeze disturbed the bees so much that they stung me 13 times, and I discovered that I'm also allergic to bee stings, and I almost died, so of course I had to move again. Persimmone had a strong feeling that she should have paid more attention to the place they had come from and the direction they had taken. But the fear of being abandoned by Warble in an unfamiliar part of the woods drove her on. "So I moved to the middle of a field," he was saying, "with no candles, no sea, no crops, no pepper, no mills, no bees, and no roof above me, and I lived on nuts and berries and took baths in the rain and dried off in the sun, and I was almost content until one day an eagle flying overhead mistook my bald head for a rock and dropped a turtle on it, and I almost died again. I've never been able to add or subtract right since. So I moved to the willow woods and built a house in low branches of a mangrove tree. How was I supposed to know it was a restless mangrove?" He spotted something over to the right and ran with more determination than ever. "Wait!" he cried. "Come back with my house!" Just then Persimmone saw what they were chasing. It was indeed a mangrove tree, a small one, walking on the tips of its sprawling, tangled web of roots. The dwelling in its upper branches looked less like a house and more like a badly made nest of wooden boards, sticks, and dried mud, with a patched-together tent for a roof. A sign was nailed to the side of the trunk. "No one lives here. Please go away." Standing still, the roots would have made a perfect ladder by which one could climb to the house above. But moving, they were like the legs of a giant spider crawling across the forest floor. The tree was evidently out for a leisurely morning stroll, but as Warble got closer, it started walking faster. The house at its top shook and rattled. Chunks of the wall started falling to the ground. With a look of utter desperation, like a man whose last hope in the world is running the opposite direction, Warble flung himself onto the nearest root. He bounced up and down, holding onto the root and shouting, "Oh, please, please stop! Have pity on me! Whatever have I done to you?" Persimmone gasped and called out, "Hold on, I'll save you," though she had no idea how. She leaped forward and grabbed Warble's legs, but that only unrolled his trousers, and she ended up with her fist full of trouser cuffs, bumping and rolling in the dirt after a fleeing tree. "Let go!" she cried, and choked on a tuft of grass. But then the tree raised the root high and gave a kick, and both Warble and Persimmone sailed through the air and landed in a pile of wet leaves. The mangrove disappeared into the forest. And we'll stop there.